Look at this big guy, chocolate. He's getting so fluffy in the winter that I'm going to have him have a lion cut before the spring because he's grown his hair so thick. I don't know if any of you have that experience, but with these Himalayans, they grow different layers of fur. And this big guy, if I picked him all the way up, he'd be almost 2.5 feet long. And he has this long, thick hair. And I try to brush it and brush it. When it gets to January and February every year, my daughter goes through the same thing. You have to go in and get a lion cut or they mat. They will mat from no hair to 2 weeks later you have mats. And you want to keep your kitties healthy. And so I love this guy and I'm glad that he's here tonight. And this morning, I woke up to fog that was just completely covering the Sandiacrest mountain that's above me. And there were small snowflakes coming down, sort of like reminding me of when you take a shaker with powdered sugar in it. And on TV, thankfully, there was a peaceful transition of power to a new administration here in the United States, with everyone wearing masks as COVID spreads even faster as it keeps changing its genetic structure. There are now at least 3 more contagious mutations of COVID out in the world, as this recent BBC News article headlined. How worrying are the UK, South Africa, and Brazil coronavirus mutants and variations? The new UK Kent mutation variant, known as B117, appears to be up to 50% more infectious than COVID-19. The Kent variant has now spread to more than 50 other countries beyond the UK, including 14 states in America. California tops the list with over 39,000 new cases, while the whole United States since the beginning of the pandemic is now mourning more than 400,000 deaths, and we will soon reach 500,000 deaths. The Kent mutation was first discovered in September of 2020 in a person who lived near Canterbury, England, in the county of Kent. And that's when COVID cases mysteriously continued to rise during the UK November 2020 lockdown. The unexpected rapid rise in new cases was because of the new Kent mutation. Secondly, the potentially more dangerous South African mutation of COVID, referred to as variant E484K, was first discovered in November 2020 in South Africa. It helps the coronavirus insidiously disguise its appearance, so the awful COVID has an easier time slipping past human antibodies that are supposed to protect us. This insidious E484K mutation has spread in just a couple of months to 20 other countries, including the UK and Brazil. And while in Brazil, E484K changed yet again into a third mutated variant. How does now this South African and Brazil, the mutations are up to 70% more contagious than COVID-19 and spreading fast? It's uncertain if the South African and Brazil mutations will change beyond the control of vaccines. A virologist at Rockefeller University in New York, Dr. Paul Bionaz, says, quote, "The new South African coronavirus is spreading so quickly around the world, and each time it goes from person to person, it gets another chance to mutate. It creates more opportunities for the virus to learn how to be resistant to the vaccine," close quote. And COVID is not the only UK problem. Another highly strange animal mutilation case has made headlines in Cheshire County, England. Quote, tongues cut out of Cheshire couple's pet sheep as killer leaves footprints in the snow. Cheshire County is in northwest England, bordered on the north by Manchester. On Friday, January 8th, the Cheshire Police Rural Crime Team went to the farm of Ferg Roylance and Zara Bowden, where they had 20 sheep grazing on their grass. 3 were their beloved pets. It was those 3 loved pet sheep the couple found dead and mutilated on January 8th, 2021, at 8 o'clock in the morning, only 200 yards from their house. The tongue in each one had been severed in the throat by a smooth, angled cut without any blood anywhere. This week, I talked with owner Ferg Roylance. Did you yourself open up the jaws of the mutilated lambs?
I did, yeah.
What did you see in the mouth and the throat?
A pretty clean cut, roughly about 5 inches back from its teeth is where the cut took place.
Was it straight?
Yes and no. I'm straight, angled.
Could you see if the tissue where the angled cut was darker in color in any way compared to the surrounding tissue?
In comparison, just a purple colour.
So you were saying that it was a purple color at the cut?
Yeah.
And beyond the purple, was it light pink?
Yeah.
And was that the case in the 3 of your sheep?
Yeah.
Did any policeman say, I don't understand why there is no blood?
Yeah. No answers have been given as to why.
What did they find in their perimeter search?
Well, it had snowed, footsteps leading from the sheep's over another field that goes to a gateway onto the main road.
Did you see the footsteps yourself?
Yeah.
And did they look like a normal man's shoes or boots or what?
Yeah, just boot steps.
And the boot steps came from the woods up to the sheep and then from the sheep back? Were there 2 sets of boot steps?
Yeah.
And when was the last time you saw the 3 sheep alive and well?
That would have been the night before, about 9 p.m.
How does a grown man wearing boots that leave tracks walk up to a pasture of 20 sheep, separate 3 out to cut their tongues from their throats without leaving any signs of struggle or blood anywhere? There was no blood in the throat, the mouth, the jaw hair, bodies, or ground. Ferg Roylance said that he last saw the sheep at 9 p.m. the night of January 7th, and they were found at 8 o'clock the next morning on January 8th of 2021. Wouldn't the sheep have bleated loudly when the man in boots approached? Or did the man in boots come to check the scene after the mutilation events were over because he worked for an agency that tracks frequencies of unidentified aerial phenomena often associated with bloodless mutilations? It's reminiscent of hundreds of sheep mutilations in the 1990s in the county of Londonderry, Ireland, also known as County Derry. That's when sheep tongues were partially or completely removed, also without any blood, leaving investigators to wonder if a laser was being used to cauterize and cut. But why tongues? In other animal mutilations of cattle, horses, pigs, goats, rabbits, and wild game such as deer, elk, and reindeer, ongoing from the 1960s until today around the world in both hemispheres, it's not only tongues that are removed from deep within the throat without blood, but it's an ear, eye, jaw flesh, genitals, and rectal and vaginal tissue that are excised from animal to animal. Some ranchers told me during my investigations beginning in 1979 for my TV documentary A Strange Harvest about the worldwide animal mutilations that they had seen one of their cows rising in a beam of light or lowered in a beam of light into a pasture where the animal was then found dead with an ear, eye, tongue, jaw flesh, genitals, and rectum cleanly excised, again without blood. Those transport beams, or whatever they are, were why some sheriffs, deputies, and ranchers by the 1970s had concluded the perpetrators of the worldwide animal mutilations are, quote, creatures from outer space, close quote. I would now like to share with you tonight a private discussion that I had with a veterinarian who was in Bentonville, Arkansas. Back in 1980, I did A Strange Harvest, 79 to 80. It was broadcast May 25th, 1980. And around that time, after the broadcast, the Bentonville Sheriff's Office in Arkansas announced that they had solved animal mutilations ongoing in their northwest Arkansas region. They produced a video shot in night vision of a cow lying dead in a pasture that they admitted that they paid for. They paid a farmer, they got the cow, they put it in the land, and it was dead. And then what they had in night vision was showing that a crow or a buzzard came and started pulling neat sections of hide off of the various parts of the cow. And they proposed that it was birds and other predators that were the answer to the bloodless excisions of so many animal mutilations. Well, that was 1980, 40 years ago. I knew the Bentonville Sheriff's Office was lying, apparently under some secret agency's orders to concoct the story and put it out so that the reporters and the media would buy the story and look away. 24 years later, in 2004, I was living in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and my investigations had expanded beyond animal mutilations to hundreds of other related subjects linked to military and intelligence whistleblowers over the years, telling me that my books, documentaries, radio, and TV broadcasts were the truth. And they wanted me to know, but they couldn't talk to me on the record themselves in some cases. Now, back to 2004, and I was in my Philadelphia office when the phone rang. A man's voice said, "You are Linda Moulton Howe?" I answered yes. He said, "I've wanted to talk to you for a long time. I'm a veterinarian who worked in Bentonville, Arkansas in 1980. And that's when the sheriff there held a press conference to announce that their night vision videos proved that the missing tissue on mutilated cattle and other animals was caused by crows and predators peeling off the hide." Well, while the sheriff was holding that press conference, says the veterinarian to me on the phone in Philadelphia, I, the veterinarian, I was doing necropsies on actual mutilated animals that the sheriff's office, the Bentonville Sheriff's Office, was secretly bringing to me, and I sent back official autopsy reports that they never made public. But Linda, you deserve to know what I found. Animal after animal secretly delivered to me by the sheriff's office for secret necropsy reports. And I found internal organs had been bloodlessly and surgically removed without any excisions on the outside of the body. I knew, and the sheriff got my reports, that we were not dealing with crows or foxes or any natural predators. Whatever was killing and mutilating those animals in Bentonville, Arkansas, was somehow extracting organs from inside the animal bodies without any surgery on the surface to enter the body. And the veterinarian said that he agreed with Sheriff Tex Graves in Sterling, Colorado, that the perpetrators are creatures from outer space. And that was 2004. Now, in last week's January 13th, 2021 Earthfiles YouTube channel broadcast, I shared the conscious experience of Crystal from British Columbia, Canada, with a gray non-human in August of 2010, a decade ago. Our interview included Crystal's description of being on a huge UFO craft and a crowd of 3,000 humans from Earth, who are directed by gray-skinned non-humans to look at a very large screen. The screen shows the entire Earth flooded with water so deep that only the tips of mountains were visible. A woman's voice in the viewing crowd could be heard yelling, 8 billion people just died. Earth's current 7.8 billion population is expected to hit 8 billion between 2024 and 2030. Could a 21st century Noah's flood happen in this decade? During my January 13th, 2021 broadcast, I thought about the many people I have interviewed in the human abduction syndrome who have also been shown screen images of mountain-high floodwaters covering all of the Earth's continents. During the broadcast, I asked if anyone in the audience had also experienced vivid dreams or real-life abductions by alien intelligences in which images of the Earth have been shown that show high floodwaters around the whole world. And since the broadcast, I have learned about a scientist who hypothesizes there could be periodic flood events related to changes in the Earth's core, maybe even every 12,000 years or so. And I am going to talk with him and other scientists about the whole issue of whether cyclic floods could affect our planet Earth. And I've heard from several of you about my question. What do these global flood destruction dreams on Earth mean when decades pass without the apocalyptic destruction happening yet in the current Earth timeline? Here is one of several emails that came to me on January 13th, 2021, from SZ in Snohomish, Washington, about a visual warning received from other intelligences. Quote, "The flood comes after a darkened sun spews solar flashes in the sky. The moon stands still in the sky far too long on one side of Earth, and the sun stands still the same length of time on the other side as the Earth's rotation stops and then rotates backwards. Great earthquakes and aurora lights fill the night and day skies. Some parts of the Earth freeze suddenly, and some experience a great melt as the Earth tilts and wobbles. It is as if the crust has unlocked and is being repositioned by some great hand. It's catastrophic, even from space. And then the water comes to repeat the 12,000-year cycle once again, rising and rising and rising. They, the other intelligences, must restart the species, almost half of them. The alien intelligences have shown us that they've pulled as much out of the sun's corona as they can. We've seen their planet-sized force fields touch the sun, pulling tendrils of dust away in an effort to help us on Earth, but it's not enough. Homo sapiens sapien is replaced with the next generation of humans. This time they will have the teachers to help them. They have returned to help. That's what I've seen. Who knows if it happened, will happen, or is just a crazy dream that keeps coming back and seems so real. Next, from Anthony J. January 15th, 2021, repeating dream of building high floods. Hi, Linda. I've been watching your videos on Earthfiles now for several years. I've seen every Ancient Aliens episode, I think. First of all, I honestly believe in your work, and I really believe you tell the truth. Here is a dream that I have had many times since childhood. Every time in this dream, I am swimming in the ocean, but there's a lot of debris, and I'm swimming in the ocean at the same height as the top of all these tall buildings. And there are other people in the water too. Not sure why this dream has showed in my head so many times. Next, Sarah, January 16th, 2021. My dream of flooding. I discovered your Earthfiles channel the other day and have found your videos to be extremely fascinating. Your last one really had me shook. This is the first time hearing about others having vivid apocalypse dreams. I had one 18 years ago, and it impacted me so much that I have never forgotten. At the time, I was 16 years old. Sirens were going off. I must have been right at the Atlantic coast because I could see the ocean water rising. Everyone around me, including myself, started panicking and scrambling to higher ground. All of a sudden, I was in some kind of building. It was higher up on a hill, but I was on the lowest level of the building. I'm with an old friend who was in shock, frozen, not wanting to move. But I knew we had to get to the top of the building to be safe. I screamed. We had to run upstairs. But he would not move, and the water was now in the building, and we were standing with it up to our hips. I remember I chose life and ran up the stairs hoping he would follow. He did not. It was like I was actually there and was being tested by something. And that's when I woke up. I remember having this overwhelming feeling of joy because I chose life. Like a weight was lifted off my shoulders and I could relax. Some of the colors from the audience about their own dreams having to do with floods. And I'm so curious if any of you have had flood dreams or any other apocalyptic dreams. It's fascinating to know whether or not it could be because the subconscious in humans picks up on frequencies and signals periodically, or some other explanation. But because it happens so much, and that's just a few notes from several people, it seems to me that it is a subject that is worth paying some attention to, and that I welcome you emailing me to earthfiles@earthfiles.com or putting your comments down at the end of the chat. Ian, who works with me on questions and research, he goes through your comments and we sift them out for any kind of new subjects that I might look into. And I am very interested in what is out in the Gestalt minds of humanity now about anything that is perhaps coming over and over and over in dreams. And now, Ian, that was a short introduction to you. What have you got up for the first question?
Okay, Linda, can you hear me okay?
I can very well.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for their super chats. I'm sorry if I've missed anyone off here, but I'm going to go through some of the names, and it's just a selection of some of the names here. So it's Pamela Jean, Mary Kelly, TNC, Melanie Meisner, Ginny McHugh, Mr. Catfish, and Stephen Adamski. So thank you, everyone. Now, I do have a few questions here. One of the questions relates to the disturbing report out of England about the animal mutilations. Specifically, why do you think the tongues were taken in this case? Other cases, we've seen other parts of the animals taken. Why do you think the tongues were taken? Can you elaborate on that, please?
The tongues of animals have been one of the most commonly removed tissues, going all the way back to the very first reports in the 1960s. As I laid out that pattern, if the cow is lying on its right side, the sky facing, that's what law enforcement calls, the sky facing is this way, the left side, and it will always be the left ear, if there's one ear, not the ground, but the sky facing. One ear, tissue around the eye sometimes, or just the eyeball and the eyelids. Jaw flesh like a keyhole. Often they come right here and there's a line. So half of it is skeleton and this half is normal. And when you open up the mouths, you cannot see any of the tongue because it's similar to the sheep when the owner of the sheep described himself opening up the jaws, looking and seeing that the cut had been 5 inches down from where the tongue was hooked. So it was 5 inches going into the throat, and that he could not see blood, and that he could see that purple line where it had been cut. And I asked him about that because in so many of the pathology, veterinarian, and hemoglobin, when I dealt with John Altschuler, the doctor who was a pathologist and hematologist in Denver in the 80s into the 90s, he found over and over again in tissue that I brought in from mutilated, usually cattle, a few horses, but mostly cattle, that under a microscope there was evidence of some kind of high heat that cooked the collagen and cooked the hemoglobin at the excision lines, but there was no carbon. And I've brought that up before. We're a carbon-based life form, and when you have, let's say, a laser, under a microscope you can see the carbon. It looks like black pepper. In the mutilator's cuts, always, there was none. And Dr. Altschuler said to me, I don't know what the cutting instrument is. It is clearly able to do a cauterization that stops the bleeding, cooks the collagen, cooks the hemoglobin, but it is not a classic laser. So now, what happened in January in England? The very fact that he opened up the jaws, and he can see down the throat, and there's no blood, there's no fluid, and as he said, it was an angled cut. And it was interesting that the police kept insisting that they would put in their reports that it was sliced. Slice sounds like something like this. And he said it was a smooth angle on the cut in the throat. And that purple color might be the same as the brown color that we kept finding in the tissue of cattle and horses, where the edge of a mutilation excision is clearly different from normal hide when you go to as many as I've been. And when you put your fingers along the edges of mutilation cuts, they feel plasticky, like plastic, like they're hard. They're hard and darkened. And that is the part in the microscope in Dr. Altschuler's office that would show that the collagen and the hemoglobin had been cooked, but no carbon residue, which should go with something like a laser. So when I asked Ferg if he had had a necropsy report, were they doing any labs? Unfortunately and sadly, this happens most of the time, the answer is, well, they took some samples, but they haven't done anything that I know, and he has no report. And a lot of labs don't even think about looking for signs of cooked hemoglobin and cooked collagen. Whatever it was that was able to take the 3 sheep, 1 at a time, 2 at a time, 3 at a time. How was it done? Remove the tongues, not a drop of blood, not a sign of struggle anywhere on the ground. Have a man's boots come from a road to the site and then back. It seems unlikely that the boots of the man is the same as the person who removed the tongues from inside the sheep. And why tongues? Why, from the 1960s to now 2021, around the world in both hemispheres, why have the tissue that has been taken over and over and over again from so many domestic animals and wild animals as well? Why is there this common repetition? Ears, eyes, tongues, jaw flesh, genitals, rectal and or vaginal tissue. I took that exact question to a genetics researcher at the University of Colorado when I was director of special projects at the CBS station in Denver working on that documentary, A Strange Harvest. And I can still remember it was a female doctor, and she was looking at photos that I had brought, and I had some necropsy reports. And I remember her forehead furrowed, and she seemed genuinely puzzled. And she said, in genetics work, she said, I would not want a collection of these tissues at all. She said the one that I would most want would be the pancreas. And it had to do with sizes and various things that genetic researchers would like. So there's never, to me, been any kind of a clear answer. And when you ask people in the human abduction syndrome, have you ever seen an animal in a UFO? I have maybe 3 cases where people have sketched and said that they saw a cow hooked up to some kind of machine and it was circulating blood. They didn't fully understand whether it was sustenance, research, the human description where there's been any alleged eyewitness to it, even in the presence of non-humans. The humans don't fully understand what's going on. So I'm not sure what happened in Cheshire, England at all, but I don't think the man's boot tracks coming from a road to the site of where the 3 sheep were lying, already mutilated, apparently, maybe, and then going back, I don't think that is the mutilator. And I don't think that a human is capable of doing to the sheep what Ferg described for me when he looked down through the jaws and into the throat. And I asked him, wouldn't a knife, if you cut a tongue, it's one of the, has blood running through tongues in humans and in animals. And he immediately said, as the owner of the sheep, yeah, blood everywhere. And there was absolutely none. Ian, this is truly one of the more extraordinary animal mutilation cases, and it's happened just in the last 2 weeks.
That's right, and we have seen the attacks or the mutilations carried out on sheep in the UK, particularly in the past, and in other parts of Europe as well. That's a feature that we have seen.
Right. And in Australia and New Zealand and the United States and Canada, there are more cattle reported in Mexico, Central and South America than sheep, at least in the records that I have had. But if the sheriff in Colorado and the veterinarian in Bentonville, Arkansas, if you took those two men who had so much experience with this, and they both conclude that the perpetrators are creatures from outer space, I think we should at least consider the fact that they dealt with not just tongues removed, they kept dealing with animal after animal in which organs on the inside of the animal would be found gone in necropsy without any surgery to the outside of the body. And when I took that very question to a laser specialist who was just getting started in 1979 to 1980 in Denver, Colorado, and he said, one of the future, say, surgeries or technology, he said, that I have dreamed about in medical school is that I would live long enough to help develop a molecule-specific frequency scalpel. And the way he described to me, all the way back in 1979 when we worked with him in the hospital, he said, I think that densities of tissue and frequencies of tissue would be the key. And you would have some sort of an energy that you could dial, and you would, if you wanted to do surgery on a gallbladder, you dial in this frequency, and that is, you go through skin, you go through ligaments, you go through bone to get to the gallbladder, but nothing is affected except for where you have targeted in the gallbladder. Not the skin, not the bone, not the cartilage, nothing. Because they will be frequency aimed at molecular extraction. And that was the discussion for the very first time in that doctor's office at the hospital in Denver, where he said, these cases that I read that sheriffs have found with veterinarians, that whole hearts are missing from inside of a pericardium. He said that's the kind of surgery that we could do. The frequency would only be the heart tissue. It would pass through everything, including the pericardium. Well, that was a discussion at the end of the year of 1979 with that medical doctor about what he thought might happen 50 to 70 years in the future. And we have hard evidence of missing organs in the bodies of animals without surgery on the outside going back into the 1960s and the 70s. So that is why I think when we come to these highly strange animal mutilation cases, we're not in the category of normal human fare, even in terms of medical technology. What about another subject?
Okay, Linda. We've got a question here about remote viewing. Do you think that remote viewing operations are still going on, although they have been officially declassified by the military?
I know remote viewers who are still doing professional. They get paid for it. And they get paid for it because remote viewing by people who have that ability, it comes up with right answers. I know it on many levels. Remote viewing can access information in what we'll call the grid, the energy grid, the frequency grid of this universe and our brains. And Stuart Hameroff with Roger Penrose in 2018, they were talking about how they have discovered that there are tubules in the human brain that they didn't know were there. And then they were hypothesizing that the human brain tubules might be the resonators with frequencies that eventually we would begin to find more ways to sort of push a button in ourselves, if you want to use that metaphor, and control intention, control focus, and resonate the way the classic remote viewer does, that it would be more accessible to humans trained about the microbial or the microtubule in the brain that might be there because of resonating with what we call the cosmic fabric. So remote viewing, from everything that I know, and some of the remote viewers that I've worked with on some of my work, it is accessing by resonating, controlled remote viewing, resonating in a focus that gets in sync with something on the Earth or out in the solar system or in the universe, and it works well enough that people are paid to do remote viewing. And it's quite fascinating, I think. Okay, Ian, what about another? Is he in there? Ian, were you abducted?
No, I'm still here, Linda. Don't worry. I said, we've got a question that relates to a phrase that has come up before, that you've used before, that has been used before by a whistleblower, I believe. Greg has asked that Linda has spoken about the many universes and the dark sea surrounding them, and something terrifying inhabiting that space. Could you tell us more about exactly what is this dark sea?
I'm working on it. Buddy in New York, who has been on my broadcast before, he and I have done, we'll call it sort of like layer one. It's so complicated. And I have an abductee who is talking about something that seems to be related. And what I want to do is continue to evolve the work that I'm doing with those two. There may be others in the abduction category who have heard of the dark wave that has come through the universe, or may have heard or seen a hologram about a cold, dark sea around all the matter worlds. We are in the process, I am in the process of trying to understand better something that I never have tried to investigate before. And it is difficult, but I am beginning to see some light at the end of the tunnel. And I would say, if all goes well, that by maybe March or April, I intend to do an in-depth show here. And I'll let everybody know. You'll look for one of the social media that when I feel like I've got a meaningful show about the cold, dark sea, I'll do it, but probably not before spring. What else?
Okay, Linda. Again, people are asking if are there any updates at all on the Spartans? Are we going to be hearing anything more from the Spartans in the future?
Maybe some of you heard how difficult the production was from me. And the residue was that they were hurt in ways because they told me the truth. And today it is very, very, very unknown whether or not the change in administrations will change some of the landscape around people like Spartan 1 and 2. And so I'm sort of deflecting the question, because right now it's better that you just trust me when I can open up something with them and with other whistleblowers, when I can open it up, I will. But I just can't stress enough that Antarctica, alien secrets beneath the ice, it's real, it's true. These men are extraordinary. Someday I had always hoped, and Spartan 1 had said, Linda, I would like to stand next to you in TV, a conference, and tell everyone that what you have in your documentary is true and is only part of the story. He really thought that they were going to be able to do that, but they have been punished, hurt, which I guess reinforces the fact that they told me the truth. But we're in a new administration. The Space Force is going to become I think a constant news, we'll say, sparking news. And where will things be a year from now if, by June, the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence, by the legislation language in the COVID relief bill that was signed December 27th by President Trump, and in the very last several end pages, had an insertion having to do, you come through all of these just budget items, and then advanced aerial threats. It just sticks out like a red flashing light. What is advanced aerial threats doing in all of these line item budget numbers? And that's where the 180 days was given inside of that bill, added up from December 27th, you come to June 24th, 2021, 180 days. And the Director of National Intelligence, in collaboration with the Secretary of Defense, is supposed to give information to the public in areas having to do with advanced aerial threats linked to foreign adversaries. And knowing what my experience is with military and intelligence, foreign adversaries can very well include something from another galaxy, another solar system, as well as on our Earth, Russia, China, North Korea. Foreign adversary is, as those two words say, something foreign that is hostile and an adversary. And it's very interesting that those two themes, advanced aerial threats and foreign adversaries, are the dominant themes in these two small sections and a 5,900 and some page bill directed originally at COVID relief, and then having this government funding, this little piece, put right at the end with that 180-day countdown. I think myself that what this signals is that maybe finally they're trying to start putting ducks in a row to the press conference of all ages. The press conference of all ages, we are not alone in this universe, and we never have been. It's so long overdue. Humans deserve it. We need to know everything that the power brokers and leaders know. And putting it under advanced aerial threats and foreign adversaries sets up that they will restrict the information in the interest of national security. So it has restrictions built in. It even said that the annex would probably be confidential. Well, what's in an annex? All of the sources, all of the literature sources, everything that the information is based on, and they have already said in that bill that that will, or implied it will likely be confidential. But maybe by July, we will have some breakthroughs, and it will be long overdue. And all of this work that I've done since September of 1979 to this day and going forward, it's just been fueled by one powerful driving force inside me. The human species deserves to know everything that their so-called leaders know about other intelligences on this planet, inside this planet, inside the moon, inside of Mars, inside of Ganymede, and on and on. They've known so much for so long. And I hope that you, all of you, everywhere around the planet, and I can continue to do breakthroughs together with information about the complexities that you know firsthand if you're in the abduction syndrome, that you know firsthand if you're in the military, that you know firsthand if you are operating inside of a government agency that is already involved with interstellar trade. And that all circles back to Spartan 1 and Spartan 2. They are the real deal. They've been hurt. That's why they are not out in the public. But get my documentary, Antarctica, Alien Secrets Beneath the Ice, and you will be sharing in some of the truths. And when you finish watching that film and you think about the implications in what has not been told, in what is a powerful motivator to Spartan 1 and Spartan 2 to want to know what they have been exposed to. Huge, gigantic, unstated pieces of our history, past, present, and future. And I hope we're all going to be involved in a lot of discussions having to do with breaking open some of those secrets. Ian, what about one more question?
Well, I was just going to comment on the last statement that you've just made. Obviously, we've got a new administration, and we're all hopeful that there will be some disclosure forthcoming. But I do have a little announcement to make, Linda. Today is a special day. It's your special day. So on behalf of Brad and I and the staff at Earthfiles, I'd like to ask our wonderful audience to join with me in wishing you, Linda, a very happy birthday and congratulations on another successful revolution around the sun.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi. I love you guys. I just love you. I'm watching some of the emojis go through the cell phone moving so fast. And I'm so glad that you are enthusiastic. And I wonder if I could share with you one of my private relationships with the sun and the earth, and that why, to me, the day of birth begins revolutions around the sun on this planet. I've always thought of a birthday that way. And what I'd like to do is just give you a piece of what I have done every year. Is you go out and you stand in the sun, facing the sun, and you feel the warmth on your skin. With your eyes closed, you say, I am one with the light. The light is one with me, and I'm in the hands of God forever. May the photons resonate my DNA and my RNA to your perfect frequency, healing me in mind, body, and spirit, and help the struggling earth. We need all to be healed in the light. Try it. Try it just once a day. Entangling your mind and your body and your soul, entangling them. Breathing in the photons, seeing them fill you up. I can be tired and do that, and I just feel like I have all the energy of the world. So that is a gift from me to you on a night when you gave me happiness. And I hope we can keep doing this exchange. And I hope that by the March equinox that we will have broken through 175,000 subscribers. We already went through 161,000 this week. So everybody help me raise the frequencies of yourselves, Earthfiles, and we'll keep on doing this. I love you guys. See you next week.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.